What?
He's done that before.
You're showing wrong. Hey, hello YouTube. This is Bub's Comics coming at you with the No Faces comic chat. That's right. Other chats have faces. Ours doesn't. That's our shtick. We're sticking with it. And with me, as always, we have Metarog. Roger, say hello.
Greetings, everyone. Great to be here again.
Aha, thank you. And we have fresh from his late afternoon nap, we have DS Comics. Go ahead, DS.
What's up, everyone? I'm glad I'm back. I missed last week, but you guys had a great chat. And yeah, I'm ready to go. I'm well rested. I had a nice long afternoon nap, so I'm ready to go.
Awesome. Thank you for showing up. Almost on time.
Almost.
Well, I just want, everyone, every now and then that I get fussed at for my tecticular difficulties. And in fact, this time, it wasn't me. Just this time. But often it is. So tonight, we have already in the chatteroo there, we got Knights of Old. He is very impatient, and that's kind of his thing. We have Gretzky 9966 in the house. Hello, Mr. Gretzky. We've got me. We've got Area 51 Mike's in the house. Welcome, welcome. Hope you enjoyed our prior fun at your expense last week. And we have Rayman the Silencer Man saying hello to everyone. And Man from Beantown is joining us. Werewolf by lunchtime, hailing from the great state of New Zealand. No, It's not New Zealand, Roger.
Not a state,
it's not.
In fact.
It's not a state. Nope, I think it's a Commonwealth. No, he's from Perth. Perth, down southern New Zealand. I think they call it Australia. And we had just outside the county line. We got the great man all the way from the Ook, the big Ook, the UK. Welcome, welcome, welcome. DS is trying to show his face. We got a quarter face chat here tonight. We'll shut his feet down.
Dealing with the ever-present problem of slabs on camera, which everybody's familiar with. The hardest thing in the world to photograph right after vampires.
So what about my Tomb of Dracula #1 and a 0.5? You don't think that'll show up at all, huh? Just be
no, you got vampire and slab. That's going to be impossible.
That's the death knell right there. Yeah.
Let's see. Mike's telling us that next he did catch our little episode last week, and next time he's going to scratch his ass. Well, congratulations. I hope your family's watching. Because someone's going to have to hold the camera.
They're proud. I'm sure they're proud. Proud as can be.
They must be.
That Canadian pride just shines through. When your digits are in other orifices, shall we say?
Well, you never want to put 5 in the 2 hole. And we got it's pronounced UK nipped ook. I don't know what that means. I think he means a gray man saying pronounced UK not ook.
UK not.
But since he spelled not wrong, I'm gonna tease him a little bit. They invented that language over there. You'd think they could spell it. And we got
everybody has to check out Gray Man's video. He was on stage in a club last Saturday, and he was out there gurgling and murmuring like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, catch it.
I gotta check that out.
It's great stuff. Yeah, great stuff.
Awesome. And let's see. And so I think that's about got us caught up. Comic Geek McD showed up too.
Hey, Mike.
Another one from across the pond. I don't know if we're going to have time for one of your bad accents. Oh, there it comes. Never mind. We made time for it.
He just moved to Glasgow. Oh, Glasgow. Over in Scotland. Yeah. Gray says that I have like a, what does he call me? A drunken Scotsman or something? He's probably right. Can I be a teetotaling Scotsman? If so, that's me.
Sure. That means like you wear a kilt, but you still cross your legs. Classy like. I like it.
That's the translation I'm not familiar with, but I'll go with it.
And so let's go ahead and dive right in tonight. We've got a great topic. If anyone cared to read the emails, anyone. First of all, what's our team name tonight? Somebody knows that one. Anybody?
Rogue,
some kind of rogues.
Rogue something.
The Ready to Rumble Rogues.
The Ready to Rumble Rogues. Okay, gotcha.
Yep.
Good alliteration.
Clearly,
I like it. Good alliteration.
You guys must have been really excited about that one.
No, I like it. I like it. I like it. Triple alliteration. I like it.
Yep. You can't beat it unless you try just a little. So we're going to talk about villains tonight. And I want to kind of go around the table and talk about what makes a great villain in our most humble opinions. Well, I'm humble. Roger's humble. DS is a little bit big for his britches.
I try to be humble here. I try to bring my humility.
I used to tell my wife all the time that what did I say? That my humility was the third best quality at which I excel.
Well, I tell Mrs.
So
DS all the time that I'm probably the most humble person I know. I tell her that all the time.
I'm sure she believes it. We got Area 51, the bumbling rogues. Well, we appreciate that. I think he's working real hard to get in the next installment of the Why No Faces. So we're gonna
probably more accurate than the Rumble City. Yeah.
I'd say so.
Yeah, probably more accurate. He's right. Yeah.
We'll go ahead and start off with with one thing that I think makes a good villain. So one thing that I think makes a good villain is awesome art.
What?
Yeah, awesome art.
Okay.
Because it really, when I think about the Joker, originally, I don't think that the early Batmans that the Joker was really a great villain.
Mm-hmm.
How early are you talking?
We're talking early Tex, and I guess once Golden Age and
Joker.
very early Silver. I think he was a more generic type villain and very kind of lazily done, that he's just kind of a prankster kind of thing. And you don't really get as much of the menace as you start getting when Batman 251 and the Neil Adams run comes in, and the kind of the reinvention of the Batman of the Joker as being more fearsome and something not just kind of a fun guy, but more a little bit psychotic, you know. And I think that how you draw the character makes all the difference, you know. And those early, like when I think of those earlier covers of the Joker, there's nothing scary about him. He just looks kind of silly, you know, really truly like a clown. So that's one thing I think makes a difference. And it doesn't, whether you agree with me or not on the Joker, doesn't matter to me. It only matters. My only real point is that I think that good art makes a good villain. And being able to portray what is villainous about them or scary about them through the art. So what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I hear what you're saying about the art. I think it's hard for me to sort of agree with you about the early Joker not being menacing or drawn as well. I think that maybe that's personal preference to some extent, but I think the best Joker covers overall are probably the early tech covers. Some of the early tech Joker covers are some of the most menacing Joker covers. But again, I agree with you that that's what makes a good villain, because I think that's, you know, part of why he's so menacing and why those are such good villains in early comics are because of how he's drawn. So we just have a different interpretation of how he's drawn early on. But I mean, especially if you just look at the cover art, I mean, he's tried to kill Batman, you know, way back. It's not a, you know, Neil Adams phenomenon where he's literally trying to murder people. You know, he's got a lot of early cover art, especially with guns, with weapons, with you know, real off the wall stuff, like multiple copies of himself doing menacing things, gigantic caricatures of himself. So I think he's pretty menacing early on, but it's because of how he's drawn. So I agree with you. We just have a different interpretation of what's more menacing. But I think that Neil Adams, that 251, is very reminiscent of a lot of early Joker covers. So yeah, I agree with you, but I think the early stuff is not as silly, perhaps, as maybe you're interpreting it to be. But yeah, I'll go ahead and agree with you for the most part there.
I'll take it with all humility. What about you, Roger? What do you think? How much does art factor in to a villain's ability to be villainous?
Well, it factors in the same way that most any character would. I mean, when we're talking about a medium that is visual to a great degree, the art is important to convey some characteristics, or at least the exploits of the villain, for sure. And certainly the way Neil Adams did that particular cover, making him obviously larger than life and allegorical, it takes it to another level. So I would agree on a basic level. To me, the Golden Age Joker was more. It wasn't quite as homicidal. He would, of course, he would kill Batman if Batman got in his way. But the Silver Age Joker seemed to have unpredictability and maniacal characteristics up the yin yang, so for lack of a better term. And
that's a perfect term.
And it really was another level of Joker. Again, I haven't read a whole bunch of the Golden Age, so maybe DS is right in that regard. So I defer to him. But the one or two stories that I've read, I didn't find him to be quite as menacing to Batman on a personal level. If he got in his way, yes, of course. But and once the Silver Age hit, and we started reading those stories that the Joker just was with the laughing gas that would kill people with a smile on their face, to just having whole plots around killing, that kind of thing was not. It's not prevalent in the Golden Age anywhere, really, but especially not in those stories. But to a great degree, I do agree that you have to have some kind of portrayal that leads you to believe that the villain has qualities that have the antithesis of the because without the villain, the hero is really inconsequential, right? I mean, you wouldn't need except for natural disasters or whatever, but you wouldn't really need it. So the way he's portrayed visually is sort of segues into that perhaps another category we'll talk about later, and that's the motivation and the characteristics as opposed to the hero.
Well, let's talk about that now then, Roger. What do you what would you throw out as another one? Is that what you're going with?
Well, yeah, certainly. Again, this is Metarog's old fogey rendition of what a good villain is, right? Yeah,
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I mean that's all I can do. I always tell everybody, I mean, I can only be who I am, and that's old fogey-ish, right? So, take it or leave it, right? But to me, motivation of the villain, or actually, when we say villain, I'm saying in quotes here, because most of the times villains don't consider themselves, and this, Bub, villains are evil, right?
Yeah.
They are just carrying out an agenda which is unpopular,
yeah, they just love killing people, and dang it, I don't understand why I can't keep doing this.
Yeah, I mean, they're like, hey, listen, when in the jungle, animals are killing each other all over the place. Why can't I? That's one kind of specious argument, right? But like Dr. Doom, I mean, I don't really even consider him a villain. He's sort of an anti-hero. He's not a mass murderer per se. But his motivation is obviously very personal to, Fantastic Four, Reed Richardson specifically, because he thinks he's been slighted, unless he's been retconned, lately. I mean, I'm talking from way back when, right? But he obviously he blames Reed for his disfiguration and for him not being, the top of the scientific community and having to be a ruler of this little tiny nation that he feels responsible for. So his motivation is very important because he, in his mind, he's in the right and everybody else is in the wrong. And perhaps you can even bridge that gap to many others. You know, Lex Luthor is another kind of similar thing. He thinks he's in the wrong. I mean, if we go way back when, you know, where Superboy supposedly blew off some of the experimental chemicals and he made his hair fall out. And again, it's the same kind of thing in Doctor Doom. It was a personal connection to that hero that made him think that he's in the right. So yeah, motivation, I think, is a very important factor in a good villain.
Well, good. I like that. What do you think, DS?
Yeah, I mean, that's similar to something I think that makes a good villain. You know, he's entirely correct, and that's a very good insight into it. You know, for me, I think villains, what makes a good villain is it's sort of like the villain is just one or two marbles away from being right and being on the right path, and you almost can agree with a lot of what the villain thinks if they just wouldn't go about it so absurdly and maniacally criminally. But they're usually very sympathetic characters, and you really you sort of would care about them and you sort of would agree with them if they weren't so maniacally murderous and evil. And it's like it's just like one or two marbles loose and it changes the whole deal. You know, the main villains, they're usually start out good and they end up bad because of things that have happened to them, which ties them to the hero stories. But they're still trying to accomplish often things that the heroes agree with, but don't want to go about it in that way. And the villains are just completely off the deep end about how to get things done. And they're often trying to accomplish similar goals to the heroes, just in different manners. And a lot of the big villains are similar to that, like Doctor Doom, like you were saying, Magneto, the Green Goblin. I mean, the Joker even, you know, he's sort of a sympathetic character. He's just completely insane. But he's even the most sort of abstract because he's just literally so insane. But there's a level of insanity for these villains where they're sympathetic characters who were once good and still are often trying to do what they think is right. And you have some sympathy for them. They're just, you know, crazy. They're a little, you know, usually a lot insane. And it's a thin line that divides them from heroes a lot of times. And that's what makes a gripping drama, especially. And, you know, I think we're talking for the most part about Marvel villains. When I think of villains and heroes, I think Silver Age Marvel essentially is the dynamic that's been the most popular in comics. So yeah, I think you know, sympathetic characters who, you know, started in a good place, but for a little bit of insanity, they've gone way off the deep end. That's, you know, if you look at most of the Silver Age Marvel villains, I think that's what you come up with.
I like that. You like that, Roger?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. Very much so. Yeah, agreed.
And you know, the darkness that I like in my comics, I like in my villains, and you know, you've got to have. There's sort of a dark factor, a creepy factor, where it's like the id and the ego and the super id and your own personality. All the good in humanity is encompassed within the villains, but that other side of the coin we still need is encompassed within the villains. So they've got to be dark, they've got to be smart, they've got to be, you know, decisive, they've got to be badass. So it's, you know.
Well, that's one of the things that I like too, is the badassery of it all. So to me, one of the things that makes a good villain too is that they have to kind of be overpowering. It's better to me when they're overpowering to the hero. So like if Spider-Man can go up against anyone basically his size, right? So because he's got the strength of 10 men or something like that, right? Or more, really.
Like 100 men.
Yeah, like 100 men. Yeah. So, you know, he's got so much strength. So you have to have a villain that has even more strength than the hero. And that's tough to get, you know, or at least someone that looks like they should have. Because in the end, the villain hopefully still loses. But at some point, I think a lot of times the heroes, it forces the better heroes anyway, in my opinion, to rely on their intelligence or to trick the villain in some way, or to prey on their more base faults like greed or their, the anarchist streak in them. You're trying to expose those things as the hero. You're trying to expose those things in the villain because at face value, you're probably overmatched as far as raw physical ability or power. The hero can be overmatched. So I think that's something that helps to make a good villain. I mean, we're talking about lots of different kinds of villains here, but the things that make my favorite villains are when the villain is just, if you just saw a picture of the two of them and you didn't know anything else about them, you would assume that the villain was stronger than the hero. I like when that happens.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the bigger the threat to the hero, the better the hero looks, and thus the better the villain. Because, for example, like you have there the Rhino, which is, he obviously in the intellect department, he's, microcephalic, but his powers are very violent, and he's tough, he's hard to damage, and he has because he's so single-minded, that part of his psyche is dangerous because he doesn't know when he's defeated. He'll keep going until literally he's out on his feet from exhaustion. But when he's part of, like, for example, the Sinister Six Spider-Man villains, where you got 6 of them trying to get Spider-Man, well, now that makes Spider-Man really look incredibly good, because not only can he defeat one villain, but he, like you said, through his machinations, through psychological warfare, through his tactics, through his intelligence, he separated them in such a way, or pitted them against each other, so that he could defeat them. That makes him look better, and it sort of makes the villains look better too, because at this point we're saying, wow, if he defeated 6 villains by himself, but they kind of did it because they didn't work as a team. Imagine if they did. The potential is there, right? And the villain doesn't necessarily have to be himself physically powerful. Like I have here Fu Manchu as the antithesis of Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi would wipe the floor with Fu Manchu, but because he essentially is the mastermind of an organization which is thousands of people deep, and has incredible funding, and is essentially everywhere. He is an incredibly powerful and overpowered villain, because one man versus a whole organization is a no-win scenario.
Yeah, I agree with that for certain. What else you got, Roger? What else brings other than, I guess, the real intellect and resource, right? I guess that's a couple of things there, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, they don't have to necessarily be, like I said, the villain doesn't necessarily have to be clever, because there are many villains that are just so powerful, like Juggernaut, which no matter how smart you are, there's not much you can do to stop them. You have to kind of outsmart him. You're never going to outpower him.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure he walks into some quicksand, or shoot him up in a rocket, or something. I'm just making that up. I have no idea, right? Another thing to me that makes a quote, I mean, kind of oxymoronic good villain, right? But is that we can sort of all agree that there's something repugnant about that villain. Now, some people in the chat are putting, for example, some that they're sorry for, like Mr. Freeze and the Lizard, who are victims of experiments, and that warp their will, or their psyche, or their personality. But there has to be something there that it's not everybody holding hands and singing Kumbaya, because otherwise there's no conflict. Why are we reading the story? It's just a kind of like a reality show of watching somebody walk around their house. So there has to be something repugnant there. There has to be something that we think or we see that is somewhat offensive to our sensibilities, and that makes him somebody that we can pay attention to, that makes him interesting.
Yeah. What do you think, DS? You think monsters are some good villains because they're just so daggum monstery?
Yeah, I mean, who brought it up here? Michael Dodd put a good comment in there. He says John Buscema's art got Mephisto off to a good sinister start. He's not insane. He's just the epitome of evil. So there's a lot of different types of villains, just like there's a lot of different types of heroes, just like there's a lot of different types of people, and these appeal to different people differently. But yeah, some villains are just reincarnations of evil, of demons, of the devil, of things that go back to our belief in planes of existence higher than ours, of religions, of nightmares, and things like that. So you've got a lot of reincarnations of demons and devils, and things like that from mythology and religion. Mephisto is a perfect example. I mean, Mephisto essentially is Satan. He's just a badass looking sort of Satan on Earth in the superhero world, and he was one of my favorite villains when I was younger. And he appeared in a lot of Thor storylines as well. A lot of cosmic stuff, obviously, with Surfer too. So yeah, Mephisto is a reincarnation of that. I really liked how they portrayed Surtur in the Thor movie. Sort of the same thing. I think they really nailed that in Ragnarok. And he was one of the best villains in the MCU so far, the way he was drawn to me. And he's just a pure incarnation of the devil, the way they did him in that movie. So yeah, there's a lot of just pure evil, dark forces from other planes of existence too. So sometimes it's just pure evil in such a striking and domineering way that grabs us. And I feel like, it doesn't matter who the villains are. We're talking about, how strong they are, how smart they are. There's a lot of different characteristics. But it seems like villains in comic books are winning 99% of the time in all the fights and all the encounters. And it's only that 1% at the end where the hero prevails. So it's really through the successes and strengths of the villains that we appreciate the heroes conquering them at the end. So what's interesting is like 99% of all the conflict is being dominated by the villains in comics, I think. The Spider-Man has been beaten up more than any superhero. He's been, everybody has beaten the crap out of Spider-Man. Such a beating all the time, but he wins at the end. But most of the Spider-Man stories, especially like Silver Age stuff, he's getting the crap beat out of him on a regular basis by villains for any number of reasons. But he wins at the end. So yeah, we like to see villains that are just evil and strong and badass, just kicking ass. But we don't want them to ultimately prevail. But we like to see them tear it up a little bit. So I don't know. That's sort of my thoughts on it.
I think that's great. Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah, and that's a good point too. I kind of to pitch, to kind of piggyback on that is that the villain has to be recurring. I mean, he can be defeated, but he still is very persistent. He'll always be back. Like, the Green Goblin. We're talking 50 years or more that he's been a thorn in the side of Spider-Man. Whether it was Norman Osborn or Harry or that psychologist that took over for a while, whoever, they're persistent. They may be temporarily, they may lose the battle, but they still think they can win the war.
Yeah, the Green Goblin was so popular. Look, it's almost like nobody cares about Spider-Man unless the villains are badass. And the Green Goblin was such a badass, cool villain, was so popular that they just continue to sort of reboot that character forever. And it's good. I mean, I was really a huge fan of the Hobgoblin when I was younger also. Hobgoblin is like the, Green Goblin from hell, sort of. I mean, he's sort of far more sinister in a way, but the Green Goblin was super popular, and they brought him back, and they have the Hobgoblin. They had recent times they had the Red Goblin. I don't know anything about, but the fact that they call them a something type of goblin shows you how popular the Goblin is in the Spider-Man story arc over time. So just a goblin is just like a demon essentially. So yeah, we like to see those incarnations of evil. But even the goblins usually started out as good people too, especially the Green Goblin. So
yeah, definitely. And I like how sometimes they can transition an existing character into a villain. I like that too.
Mm-hmm.
When it was someone you already knew and then becomes a villain, I like that, especially if it's someone you didn't necessarily dislike before. So I like that. I think poor Knights of Old is over there pulling out his hair because we just haven't mentioned writing yet. So he's mentioned it a few times in the chat. So I'll throw this one up, and I'll call it writing. So Taskmaster is one of my favorite villains, and I hate that now when I say that, there's a small section of the population that rolls its eyes and thinks I'm bandwagoning or something. But I would almost guarantee I'm not excited for him to be in a movie, because then this is my favorite. His origin story, which is so perfectly written, is my favorite story of his. So for me, the thought that he's going to be in a movie and there's going to be a new telling, even though there's already been like 2 or 3 retold origins of Taskmaster.
Mm-hmm.
When they do a movie that's going to be completely different, and that all of a sudden anyone knows about the character will be whatever Marvel puts in the movie. So I hate that. But other than that, to me, this story is so touching to me. And it also really affected me when I read it, because I never liked villains. I was never been like my son, he likes Daredevil. I mean, he likes, I got Daredevil on the brain still. Sorry, guys. He likes Deadpool. He likes the Joker. And to me, it's like, man, those guys Deadpool's kind of more a villain to me than he was a hero. Or an anti-villain, an anti-hero, I guess. Mm-hmm. And the Joker is straight up a villain. He very rarely is anything but a villain. And so villains are hard for me to identify with. I just don't like them. To me, I like the hero. I identify with the hero, and the hero is what I want to be, and I never wanted to be a villain. But when I read this story, it was really like, if I was going to be a villain, that's the villain I would end up being. Not that I would want to be that villain, but that's probably who I would end up being.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So just a practical, pragmatic guy. He looked at the situation. He took what he could and created a persona, and he had very small goals. He wasn't trying to rule the world. He was just trying to run a business, Yeah. That, like you said before, just happened to push him on the wrong side of the law. He
avoided conflict if at all possible.
Yes.
He wanted others to do the dirty work for him. He didn't want to get his hands dirty if he could avoid.
But he was prepared.
Was he?
Prepared and capable. So anyway, yes, I think that the writing, of course, some awesome art there, but I think the writing really takes this to another level for me. So yes, I can be drawn into a good villain. Now, does that make him a good villain for everyone else? Is he at the top of the list of amazing villains out there? Probably not. But for me, he's one of my favorite villains. So a connection.
I'd agree with that. I think, as far as logical villains, I mean, I think he's one of the best. Trying to, think about it, right? I mean, the best villain is the one that nobody can find. Nobody can. If you don't know that he's there, you can't be defeated. So for somebody to be behind the scenes is the best possible way. I mean, it's cowardly perhaps and underhanded, but that's part of the villainous approach are those, right?
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah. Oh, look, Michael Dawes says Pace Pot Pete. Okay. I mean, JD might agree with you. I think he's a pig Pace Pot Pete, but to me, not one of my favorites, Michael.
For a long time, I didn't even know who Pace Pot Pete was, and then very early on in our first couple of chats, DS had mentioned him like 4 times. I don't know if he just happened to have seen a copy recently or something, and he kept saying Pace Pot Pete, Pace Pot. I'm like, who the hell is he talking about? And I shortly thereafter went to a con, and there was a guy dressed as Pace Pop Pete at the con, and I was like, "This is ridiculous," you know.
Yeah, I mean, did he have a bucket with glue that he had to stick a gun in?
Yeah,
you know,
he walked around with the bucket, and it was the whole thing. It was wild looking and very good, and I think a lot of people didn't know who the heck he was, but I did, thanks to you crazy people.
Yeah, I think
his bucket, and he's hopeless.
That's it. Pete at a con last year as well. He carried the pot around.
Did he? Oh, goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure he was made as some kind of joke. I don't think that he was made as any kind of, serious attempt at a villain. I mean, later on he got morphed into a better, more capable villain called the Trapster. But he wasn't that good either. So.
Yeah, I think there's some villains. I mean, there aren't many, but there are some villains who I don't think are ever going to be that popular because they're just not. Their look is not as demonic and maniacal and badass. And one of them is the Penguin. I mean, Penguin is, as diabolical as any of the Batman villains. But I don't see a lot of Penguin fans out there, and I think it's just because he's, looks like, everybody knows the Penguin looks like. He doesn't look like Mephisto or Darkseid or Bane. Bane is a real cool villain. He's, Juggernaut too. I mean, these are just big badass guys that just wreck shit. And, I think that's part of what makes a good villain is, physical capability and just, scary looking. And then, guys like the Riddler. The Riddler is not a super popular villain either. I was just thinking about the Batman villains going back. But the Joker is a different story. I mean, he's not, physically huge or muscular or anything, but he's drawn that way in a lot of art, especially cover art. He's, I don't know. I mean, there's some villains that are just sort of the image and their look doesn't strike fear to see them. And I think you have to have a villain that strikes fear into you just by how they look.
The look of the villain is important to you.
Yeah, I think the look of the villain, not so much as how they're drawn, but what's their image. Like when you first see them, and especially in the comic book medium, it's an art and a writing blended together. It's a very unique art form. It's not just writing or just art, it's both blended together. So the first time you see villains, not necessarily their first appearance, but the first time you see them in a particular story, it's important that image is striking and strikes fear into the hero and makes an impact on the reader. And it's tough with some of these villains to draw something that's really that striking, and I think that's part of what's lacking in some villains. But some villains you can draw, and they're really striking, like Taskmaster. Taskmaster, he's badass every time you see him. And that cover art, I mean, he's just kick-ass looking right off the bat. So, I think you've got to have a look where it jumps out at you when the first time you see him in a storyline too.
Yeah, I think Mr. Gretzky's tapping in on something too, that sometimes it's the opposite of what you're saying, DS, that might make a good villain, but they're more like the comedy version. Like, to me, this is an example of that. Like the Stilt Man.
Yeah.
And Gretzky's saying, Crazy Quilt, Eraser, Blockbuster, Penny Pincher. I mean, there's so many kind of like, are you kidding me?
Well, my favorite
I've never heard of Penny Pincher.
Are you kidding me? Genre is Mr. Mix-It-Plick. That guy is
so
cool. I really don't go after superhero books, but I wouldn't mind getting a Superman, which is the first appearance of him, because it's just like an Alice in Wonderland weird trippy villain, and he's just super cool, the stuff he does. He's not really that dangerous, and he's easy to get rid of, and you just trick him into saying his own name and he disappears. But he's just a nuisance, and it's creatively done. But he's this short little fat dude in a suit with a hat on, and he's not.
he's got a derby
and he's sort of a silly boy. But
he's not really that villainous. He's more, like you said, more of a nuisance. But I think he's a good character. I mean, if we want to, get off labels here.
He qualifies as a villain though, but I don't think he's all that dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's as far as I know, he's never killed anybody or anything like that. But man, he has made Superman's life a living hell.
Yeah, almost more so than other villains.
Almost more so, right? Because he's pretty much powerless against him, except his only weakness is that if you say his name or scribe it backwards, he get rid of him for, I don't know, I forgot how long, a few months or something.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's it. And that's it. That's his only weakness. And of course, Superman is he's already ready. He's already thinking ahead, and he's coming back, So.
Yeah, I think another thing that defines a good villain is their intense hatred for the hero.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that they have to be kind of fixated. Like the Joker is fixated on Batman. There's lots of, good guys, and maybe not directly in Gotham City, but there's lots of good guys out there, and he only cares about Batman. He just wants to destroy him. He pretty much leaves everybody else alone. And I think that Sabretooth is a good one. You guys knew I was going to talk about him.
Mm-hmm.
The absolute the not just the fixation, but the persistence of trying to damage the hero, not just kill him, but damage him. Like, ongoing through the comics, Sabretooth has this deal where he shows up on Wolverine's birthday. Like every time it's Wolverine's birthday, Sabretooth shows up to play psychological games, to murder people around him, and really just try and drive him insane. Mm-hmm. Just kind of to prove to Wolverine that he's no better than Sabretooth. Sabretooth is always trying to say, hey, we're the same. And Wolverine says, no, we're not. So Sabretooth constantly goes out of his way to show Wolverine or to put Wolverine in situations that bring out the worst in him and make him doubt whether he's a hero at all. And I think that is a good quality of a villain that has kind of staying power in the comics, is that he has to be able to constantly show up and always be a nuisance and always be someone that's going to challenge the morals of the hero, because at some point the hero's got to get tired of this crap, and I guess kind of like in a Killing Joke kind of way, just finally be done with it. I've had enough. I can't save you. I can't fix you. We can't keep you in jail. Like Arkham Asylum, the walls must be made of paper in that place, because you can't keep villains locked up. So I think at some point the hero has to really be at their wit's end, caused by the villain, and just want to end the villain. And I think that's another mark of a good villain.
Yeah, totally agree. That kind of persistence and that kind of fascination. Again, that's another thing I was going to say. The connection. I think that's what you're saying, right? The connection to the hero, to me, makes a villain more interesting. Right, that there's some kind of either, whether it's being tenuous or whether it's something that's very solid connection. Like the Green Goblin, we know that Harry Osborn is a friend of Peter Parker and the son of Norman Osborn, right? The Ra's al Ghul, right? It has a connection because of his daughter, for example. There's always some kind of either on a subplot level or on an origin level that comes back, so that there's a connection that cannot be broken except by the villain ultimately triumphing. And because they continue coming back over and over and over and over, unless, like you said, the hero gets tired and just goes kamikaze on them and bash into another dimension or something.
I think that's true too, because every now and then that is a big turning point for the hero, is how they deal with the villain. If they cross that line, like Diaz says, there's such a small line there. And if they cross that line, that's often a changing point for the hero story arc. And also the other way around, if the villain does something so vile that they have finally crossed the line with the hero, to where the hero abandons their better instincts and their more judicial side and just seeks, raw justice and vigilante justice, then I think that is also a turning point. So I think a good villain affects arc. You know, not just small stories, self-contained in a couple of issues, but a good villain leaves its mark on the hero.
Yeah, and I think along those lines, I think a good villain, or the best villains, are the ones that can sort of get the heroes to sort of be bad for a minute. You know what I mean? Because they can draw the heroes down to their level, to stoop to their level, to violate their own morality, even for a short time. And that's the mark of a good villain, to get the hero to stoop to their level. And sometimes they just a lot of comic book stories have the villains just trying to goad the hero into being bad, just to ruin their own self-image of themselves. You know, and that if you can get the hero to step into the dark side for a minute and do something they wouldn't normally do that they'll regret, you can affect their psyche and you sort of psychologically win. You know, a lot of villains have done that over time and have been successful. You know, it's easy to do when you have Wolverine because he's not been the most sort of ethical hero of all time.
Or stable. Yeah.
Yeah, he's, you know, and in the 70s, of course, you have this anti-hero sort of thing, which are basically superheroes with a touch of villainy built in to them from the outset. You know, Wolverine and Punisher and Deadpool's like that. He's not really a very good guy. You know what I mean? Yeah, I think we like to see the hero drawn in to being pulled down to the level of the villain and do something bad, and it's sort of there's a psychological warfare going on along with the physical battles that they have back and forth, and I think those psychological battles are very intriguing when you see them in story arcs.
You know, one that comes to mind along the lines of what we're talking about is the Legends miniseries that DC did back in the 80s. And a very unusual kind of plot line in which the villain's dark side, he said, you know, if we go over there, we're attacked, you know, the whole planet is going to be against us. So what he did is he sent somebody to turn the planet against the heroes psychologically and through propaganda. And it almost worked. I mean, at some point, it was almost like a civil war kind of thing, and where the heroes were being outlawed. And to me, that makes, you know, like Bub, like you said about Taskmaster, this is just taken to a macro level. Why would villains do that when they know that they're going to be, you know, essentially they can never show their face or anything anywhere? But if you have a concept that is what smashes the villain's ideals, then you're certainly going to be ahead of the game, and you're going to have a much higher degree of success, because now we're talking about, you're not, even the heroes, as powerful they're not going to take on the whole population. So that was, I think, a smart kind of tactic to try to get the heroes to be villainous.
Yeah, the villains usually have better PR departments than the heroes, it seems like.
Yeah, true enough.
The heroes are blinded by good ideals, and they just think everybody automatically recognizes the good ideals. But the villains are usually smart enough to whip up support among people against the heroes. They're much better at propaganda and PR, and you know, they will use people against the villains or against the heroes, and the heroes usually don't use the people against the villains. The heroes just fight the villains with themselves and their friends and other heroes. But the villains will use sort of pawns, regular people, either directly. Sometimes they'll, you know, exert a power over a group of people and turn them into like a horde of their own pawns. And sometimes it's just through, you know, a good old-fashioned propaganda. So, but again, part of the psychological warfare, that's very interesting.
I like that. Hey, Roger, do me a favor. Let's shout out some of the chat. We haven't.
Great.
We've been I've really enjoyed this discussion. I gotta be honest with you. I don't. I enjoy all our discussions, but this one's been really fun for me. So I kind of wasn't paying attention.
Awesome, and the chat's got some really good stuff in here, guys.
Yes, thanks for all the collaboration.
I mean, you guys have. I mean, if we took all of this, we'd be here like all day. But by the way, Silver Age Dave is in here now. Matt, Boy Who Had 7, is in here. Thank you for coming by. Tim, the comic collector, is in here. Mr. Gretzky, I think we already said that. Michael Dodd has joined us again, and Ranger Sly. These guys are aces, man. These guys know their stuff. Look, Ranger Sly, good. This is the point I was going to make. Kingpin, he was just kind of a crime boss. You know, he just wanted to sort of run an organization, and then Miller got him over to Remember, he was originally a Spider-Man villain. Miller brought him over to Daredevil, and which the same thing that we're talking about here. He didn't attack him physically. He attacked his reputation. He attacked through Karen Page, you know, that he found out who he was, and he started slicing back the layers of his life. That is real villainy to me. That to me is the epitome right there, and Miller did a great job of that. I haven't read that in a long time, but man, I'm going to reread that for sure. Unruly Simeon's here. How you doing, buddy? Really great supporter of ours and of Graders Notes. In fact, hopefully he's going to have an announcement there soon. DS Comics is here with a blue wrench. Oh yeah, he's in the chat. Who cares? Michael. Yeah, Sinister. The Squadron Sinister were a front rip on JLA. Yeah, essentially all it was is the Marvel's version of the JLA that was ripped off. I did a video on this some time back. Werewolf by Lunchtime, Molecule Man. Oh boy, pretty good FF villain. Kind of like was morphed in the Secret Wars to some kind of guy who was just like a regular guy who could be, you know, swayed either way. Yeah, good stuff. Ranger Sly is saying any ridiculous villain can be cool or creepy in the hands of a good writer. Purple Man, good point. Used to be this Daredevil villain that was just kind of a so-so. And then later on became really sinister, murderous, all that. Let's see who else is in here. Gray Man, always one of my favorite guys. He's talking about the Griffin, and that's a villain from Marvel. I believe he was originally a villain of the Beast, who looks like a griffin, you know, like a lion with flies.
Pretty cool looking.
Yeah, very cool looking. Yeah, and DS
very imposing.
DS would like that villain because it's a very.
I don't think I'm familiar with the Griffin, honestly.
Yeah, you would like the look of that villain. It was
cool looking.
Check it out.
Yeah, and later on he grew this tail with spikes, and he looked like just terribly bad. You know, just some guy you wouldn't want to see in any circumstance. Mr. Gretzky, Kite Man. I'm not familiar with that. Is that a Batman villain?
Let's hope.
I don't know. I'm not familiar with Kite Man. I'm sorry. My Batman knowledge is very low, guys. And then we're back to Paste Pop Pete. And Gladiator and Daredevil, that's another tragic villain. Yeah, I'm not going to go into that, but yeah, that's true. And Comic Geek McD, and I think that's where we left off. Great chat today. These guys are on fire.
And since we started all that, we've had Thomas Churchill pop in. We've had the Conquistadorks were here.
How you doing, buddy?
Mr. Miracle is here.
Boy. Oh boy, Mr. Miracle, you got to catch the last Graders Notes if you on Tom McFarlane. Okay, you believe me, it's going to be worth the watch. Mr. Miracle was on fire.
I have to check that out. I love it.
You will. You do.
I missed the last Graders Notes, and I was excited too because it's on a book that I love. So
yeah. So well,
I know. Listen, it's just like all this. The Spider-Man McFarlane run and like the actual Spider-Man ones. I mean, they get a lot of cover love for the art, but the stories in those are so hard to read.
Yeah. Man, I love you're talking about McFarlane Spider-Man.
Yes,
man, I love those. I think the art inside is better than the art on the cover, and the stories are good. I like them, and they have a good, especially McFarlane Spider-Man run has a really good 80s feel to it. That even the hairdos of the women in there and the background.
The mullets and
like you're watching an 80s movie and it's edgy and it's cool. I love McFarlane Spider-Man. That's what this stack is over here. I've got the whole McFarlane Spider-Man run over here. I've been reading it and I'll sell them, but they're so fun to read through. I love it.
We weren't talking about McFarlane Spider-Man run, although I'm sure someday we will tackle that. But we were talking about the iconic Hulk 340 issue, and let's just say that up in Canada, a certain Calgarin is not crazy about another Calgarin. Let's just leave it at that. That's another show.
I'm sure of that. We got 90 MF Comics. I think that's Miles from, right? So 90 miles from Comics.
Yeah, that's Chad. Yeah, he's a Floridian.
Pretty cool. has also joined us. So glad to have you all here. Really, really, really just proud to have you all here. Thanks again. And Scoots Comics shows up here.
Hey, Scoon, how you doing, buddy?
Folks. Scoots Comics. What did I say? He
Love
says,
his videos.
my favorite villains are always the ones that think they're the good guys.
Mm-hmm.
Magneto,
Yeah, we talked about that. Yeah.
Octopus spring to mind. Octopus. What about that? We didn't talk about him today. I assume it's a him. I don't know who that is. Who's Octopus?
Octopus?
Oh, Doc Ock. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Unless he's talking about the spirit villain. Yeah. That'd be Dr. Octopus.
I think it's safe to say he's probably talking about Doc Ock. So
okay.
I always loved Doc Ock as a villain because I thought one of the cool things about Dr. Octopus was that he basically ended up, because Spider-Man, you would think, you know, if you just heard the name Spider-Man, you would think that he had how many arms, right?
Right.
And then instead, you have Dr. Octopus, who really did have all those arms. And of course, you realize, well, if Spider-Man had all those arms, maybe he'd be a villain. Of course, anyway.
He did have them temporarily in, I think, ASM 101 and 102. But
yeah, the six-armed Spidey.
The six-armed Spidey, yeah.
Yeah, I was never a huge fan of that one.
No, not too many people were. No, not too many people were.
About the only time that I enjoyed the Doc Ock or the Spidey when he would metamorphosize.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't like him when he turned into a real spider, like a real nasty spider. I didn't like him when he had 6 arms, but I did like him when he turned kind of into the Hulk and he was a Spider Hulk. I thought that was pretty cool. I like that. There's some good art there too. Yeah, so Hialeah Comic Bros in the house. I think they had a chat, going on. Monday Night Raw they had going on. So glad it's kind of like on football when like we want to welcome everyone who's joining us from Monday Night Raw. You're currently watching
the Chargers
No
LA.
chat.
Everybody from the Chargers LA game. Thank you for joining us here at the Oakland Coliseum. Oh man,
glad to have you all. Hey, it's about that time, you guys, for the Why No Faces segment. It's about the hour.
Great.
And glad you all could have joined us. So in tonight, so he's not in the chat, unfortunately. He's not in the he's not watching right now. Maybe he'll catch on the replay. Is Comics with Bueller. So Comics with Bueller has asked. He threw his hat in the ring and he said, "Go ahead and try and find a Why No Faces still of him." So a quick recap of what this is. So the Why No Faces segment is simply I'm going to show a picture. It's going to be a screenshot from an actual video that they've posted themselves to YouTube. And it's going to be just basically the worst screenshot, the worst still image I can find of someone is what we're going to put on there. And that's why we don't show our faces on the No Faces chat, because we don't want to look like this. So let's see if it'll pop up for us. That's not what we want to look like.
Oh, man.
Bless his little Bueller heart. Now, this is back before he got all that Bueller box money. So this is an old video. This is back before the studio. This is back before all that good stuff. This is Bueller sitting in somebody's basement, pumping out, hey, what's a trade paperback videos. So this is
this is before he had a spinner rack, probably.
Oh yeah, this is before all that.
Oh boy.
So looking pretty good there. Glad to have you on there, Peter. We'll send you a picture of this later. I'll holler at him later and tell him he missed one.
Hey, you know, Bub, how in Marvel back at least in the 70s, when you find an error in their comics, they'd send you a no prize.
Yes.
Right. So we can send a no face prize.
Yeah.
And this is what it is right here.
Oh, he's here. Thomas is here now. He's in the chat.
Hey, Bueller
there
made
he is.
it.
Love it. I tell you, man, Bueller has like some kind of YouTube sense. He knows where to go.
Well, we're glad
Bueller had the biggest splash in the community of all time, I think, of all the time I've been watching, because there was no Bueller. And then one day, this guy got on there and did the most hilarious top 10 pet peeves in comics.
Mm-hmm.
And he instantly overnight had like 10,000 subs or whatever. And that was like one of the greatest debut videos of all time. You know, and you don't usually think somebody's going to stick with it or maintain that level, but he's just gotten better and better and has stuck with it. So awesome that he's our, you know, the debut of our Why No Faces segment as well. So awesome.
Well, we had one last week.
We had Mike Area 51 last week. You were just not here.
Yep, we had Area 51 on last week. Mike was knuckle deep. I think it was second knuckle deep into his nose, and we got him on camera.
He was mining.
No,
he was mining for gold.
It was on.
Yeah, I wasn't watching. I had this on in the background. I was listening to last week's show, and maybe I didn't listen to the end or whatever. But I didn't. Yeah, I didn't really watch it. I listened to it, so I'll have to go back and check that out. I missed that.
It's hilarious. And a lot of people said he was on the rim and it was just a rub and no pick, no penetration. But I don't know. You got to see it for yourself.
That's one of those controversies that will just live in infamy. You know, like was there a guy in the hedge? You know, when they shot Kennedy, or was there a finger in the orifice when we put a face for Area 51?
Well, we had also we had Mike, Night Tiger Mike, right? So he also has thrown his hat in the ring. He wants me to find an unfavorable. So that's open to the chat. If anyone here wants to volunteer themselves to be on a Why No Faces segment, just give your permission down below. Anybody want me to find it's going to be the most unfavorable that I can find. And let me tell you, the last two have been really tough because Area 51 Mike barely moves his face in videos. Like it's just mouth movement and that's it. There's nothing else going on, you know, so it's hard to find a tough one to him. And and Bueller now is super polished. Like his videos, he looks like here he hasn't. If you look at this picture here, he hasn't shaved in a few days for sure. You know.
Yeah, it looks like he hasn't slept in a few days either.
Awesome. But now he's like studio ready all the time. You know. So I had to go real far back to find an unfavorable picture of him. So
he's Reggie Simmons polished now.
You know. Let me tell you, Reggie Simmons is one of the easiest ones to find. That guy's got a rubber face. If you pause it at any moment, it's all wild, man. It looks like somebody hit him with a water balloon or something. It's great.
Yeah, me and Mrs. DS call it it's a drug called pause, and it affects everybody differently. And you know, whenever you do it, that's what the person looks like when they're high on pause.
Oh, man. That's funny. That is funny. I gotta do that. I gotta do that. I never even considered that.
That's great.
Yeah, I'll throw my hat in the ring if you want to find one of me, because I do.
You barely move your face either, but I'll try.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I mean, you
can
could
Golden Guys.
I mean, I do the Tuesday night Golden Guys show, and you can dig through that and pause it over and over and frame by frame. You might, see what you can do. I'm down for finding the most unflattering one you can find. I'm down. You can throw me on the list.
I don't think anybody else in the chat is. I don't think anybody else has been brave enough to say anything.
I don't see people rushing to volunteer.
Yeah, I don't see them.
What a bunch of chickens! Bark, 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 bark. Oh man! Well, we got Bad Dad in the chat. Welcome. Yes, it's Monday night already. He must be on the DS comic sleep schedule. Just waking up when the phone tells him it's on. So yes, it's his beaver face. I love it, man. There was one Bueller saying it's his beaver face. When there was one video that he did, the Kabuki or the Muckabucka or something, where he sits there and eats pizza for like a half hour.
Mukbang.
Yeah, mukbang.
Yeah.
Yeah, he sits there and eats pizza for like a half hour. And even in that video, I couldn't find an unfavorable shot of him eating pizza. So this guy's just photogenic. I'm telling you. This was a hard hunt.
He's like that movie, The Accountant, where they tried to find him through videos, and he always had his face tilted just so that they couldn't make him out. That's Bueller. He's just so polished that, you can't get him in a, shall we say, in a compromising position.
Tell you, it's that Bueller box money. I'm telling you. He's gone Hollywood.
I tell you, that $1.50 per box that he makes, it goes a long way.
There's a lot of people that do those mystery boxes. There's a real art to putting together the mystery boxes where most of the people are happy with them. It's a very difficult thing to do mystery boxes and not have people pissed off at you.
We talked about that. We've talked about that before. Yeah.
Very difficult.
And, Bueller is the best at that. Yeah.
I tell you what, who else is really good at it is Matt, Boy Who Had Seven. He did a crap ton of those mystery boxes, and he only had like 2 people be jerks about it, and the rest were all like really happy with it and was super pleased. And you can't get everybody happy, but those guys do pretty well. So it's all lighting, Bueller says. It's all lighting. Hey, Gray Man says we can do him if we want. Well, we'll see. Well, I may do a reverse on him and actually just try and find a favorable picture. I do enjoy a challenge there.
he did one some time ago where he was like really sick, like I had a cold or whatever. I tell you, I thought he was going to just collapse in the video. I mean, he looked so sick. But
we'll give it a shot. Try and find that one.
I was like, I'm praying, please please be okay, you know. But
we got Thomas Churchill also saying he's down, so that's good. And now he's such a nice guy. I bet it's going to be hard.
Yeah, you're not going to find anything on Mr. Churchill.
It's going to be tough. But I know he's in my neck of the woods, so I thought maybe I'd have seen him at the convention I went to last weekend. But he wasn't there. Well, I didn't see him. But that we might have to do a candid shot or something. But no, it's got to be somebody who puts on a video, and it's got to be taken from a video. Because if they were willing to put it up there, there you go.
There you go. It's like public domain.
I'm scrolling up to see if the Boy Who Had Seven, if he's volunteered for this. I don't think he has, but we could find one with him not smiling. That would be a challenge because he's like the happiest guy.
I know.
He is. I don't think I've ever seen him not smiling in his videos, but I don't think he's volunteered. But that would be a good one to find.
Well, you know, he's got that great family, a great wife.
I know,
great friends. I mean, he's a very blessed man.
To find a frame of him frowning would be quite an accomplishment. I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
I might have to turn a picture of him smiling and just put it in upside down or something. And see if that'll work.
Got that one.
That's the other thing is I'm not enhancing or changing these pictures at all. So that's tough because I thought about putting a big old piece of pizza on his chest or something, but that wasn't going to work.
I believe you, but I'll tell you, your editing skills and your special effects at the intros of your videos is really starting to be professional quality. You've got that light bulb blowing up with your little logo in it now. You got
it's fun. I like doing that stuff.
Yeah, you got the movie. I like the movie one where it's like you're coming into the theater and you're on the billboard and you go into the theater and watch BUB'S comics on the big screen. That one's a cool one too. It reminds me of the old HBO.
The big reveal. Yeah.
Yeah. Where they have
that's cool.
A little town built and they have the camera zoom in through the town and into the window.
I love that.
Yeah, the old original HBO intro.
I love that intro. That was all scale models they did, or little.
Yeah, they did a scale model of the town, and they brought the camera flying over that little model town into the window. Yeah, it was real cool.
Yeah, that was before computer graphics was a thing. So, I mean, they had to do it the old-fashioned way. Yeah.
Cool. All right, guys, we've done it again. Poor Bueller. We'll give Bueller a break. Thanks, Bueller. Thanks for being on with
Bueller. us. I mean, these are really good sports that are saying this. They're really good sports. And, you know, when we make fun of them, they know that it's only because we love them to death that we would do that.
Yes, so. and we really do want to. I want it to be volunteers only because I don't want to be a bully. So as soon as people stop volunteering, that's when I'll start volunteering people. So
then you will. Okay, we were just talking about this, weren't we? We were talking about heroes that turn to villains. Here we go.
Oh man!
Yeah, but
good deal, guys.
Change as soon as we run out of volunteers, you watch.
Yeah, so keep volunteering, or you will be volunteered. All right, guys. Well, we done it again. We went through another hour plus of the No Faces Comic Chat. I want to thank Roger for joining us, and DS, of course, and everybody in the chat. You guys were awesome. Very, very awesome. Thanks to Bueller for being our special faced guest. and really everyone who's volunteered to. This is going to be fun. We'll keep this rolling. It seems popular. I'm sure having a blast with it. So thank you all, and we'll catch you next time. Roger, you want to go ahead and say your goodbyes?
Yeah, this has really been just a fabulous chat, guys. I mean, the villainy. It's one of those topics where there's so many ways we can take it, and you guys in the chat though have hit a home run. You guys have been amazing, stupendous, terrific, fabulous. All those euphemisms. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for because you make this chat. As much as I love Bub and DS, without you guys, we'd just be whistling in the wind. So everybody, be blessed and be back.
Thank you, Roger. I don't always whistle in the wind, but I do things in the winds. Well, I don't do things in the winds. Anyway, go ahead, DS.
All right, well, glad to be back after the week off. I really missed you guys. I'm really glad everybody's in the chat. Just an awesome chat again. Make sure everybody tunes into my auction. Not my auction, but I'm doing an auction Thursday night on White Whale Comics channel. And I'm going to have all big books, big keys. White Whale and John's Comics for Kids will be there too. So we're going to sell some awesome books Thursday night on White Whale's channel. So throw a plug out there for that. But other than that, great chat. Thanks everybody for being here. Do your homework, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, DS. Roger, did you have anything coming up that you wanted to shamelessly plug as DS has started the precedent of?
Well, this Saturday, Lawrence from the Go-To Geeks and myself, we're going to be doing a live stream on the Power Records and Comics duo that occurred during the 70s. We're trying to do these special videos, he and I, every once in a while. And of course, I got my roundup on Thursday. Tomorrow, I'm going to announce the end of my contest, but you still have today and tomorrow to enter. So check my August 20th video if you want to enter. You pick a comic. When I go to the con on Saturday now because they changed it. If I find your comic, guess what? You get it, and plus other stuff. So that's it.
All right, loving that. I don't really have anything to plug. I already filmed all my con videos, so there's like 5 of them that are going to be streaming down at you. I also ended up, so there was a video. I don't know what to do with this video. So apparently, as I was walking through the convention, I think I told you guys, or maybe I didn't. I don't know if the video I posted today with my Daredevil one and my ASM 41 and Superman 199. Anyway, if I don't know if I mentioned it, but I was one of the first ones there. I got the early pass. And I was one of the first ones to the convention, to the pre-registration, right? Mm-hmm. First one in line for registration, and the first one through the doors. Oh, so all that aside, I was there so early that as I was walking through, they were filming the what to do when you get here for Facebook. So like directing everyone, like, here's where you come. You're going to come down this escalator. You're going to walk over here. You're going to go over there, So, wow. And I'm caught in that video. So like the entire video, they're just like pointing at me like, yep, and this is where you're going to go. And they're just like pointing at the back of my head the whole time. And you can see my big suitcase, that I carry the football, right? Mm-hmm. You can see the big metal case. Looks like it's got nuclear codes in it. You can see that through the whole video. So I thought it was pretty funny. So I went ahead and grabbed that off the interwebs and edited it up. So I have like a 2.5-minute video of that. Cool. And I just don't know what to do with it. Like, I don't think anybody wants to see that. You know what I mean? So maybe I'll do like a private video, and just, put you guys in on it or something. I don't know. But that's like a video maybe I'll drop sometime next weekend if I'm bored. But anyway, so that I really got nothing else going on. Tons of haul videos from the con to come. And that's about it. So, and this, of course, every Monday, the No Faces chat, which I love. All right, guys. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll again say goodbye. And what was it? Be blessed, be back, do your homework. Should they do their homework before they're blessed and back? Yes. Do your homework.
Probably, just in
case.
Then
be blessed and be back, and somewhere along there you should read a comic. All right. Thanks, guys. We'll catch you next week on the No Faces Comic Chat. You all rule, and we will check you later. Bye-bye.
See y'all.
Bye all.